Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Good morning to all of you. My name is Sri Kumar Nair. I'm the CEO of Indiaspora, based in Delhi. I would like to welcome all of you to this launch of the impact report jointly done by BCG and Indiaspora. We had the initial launch in the US in 3 cities. Now we're going to formally launch it here today. Before I invite MR to the stage, I would like to thank our partners, IPA, NASSCOM, TIE Delhi, US India Business Council, and US ISPA for their support. And of course, BCG for their unwavering support to make this happen. MR, over to you. Come over, MR.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Good morning to all of you. My name is Sri Kumar Nair. I'm the CEO of Indiaspora, based in Delhi. I would like to welcome all of you to this launch of the impact report jointly done by BCG and Indiaspora. We had the initial launch in the US in 3 cities. Now we're going to formally launch it here today. Before I invite MR to the stage, I would like to thank our partners, IPA, NASSCOM, TIE Delhi, US India Business Council, and US ISPA for their support. And of course, BCG for their unwavering support to make this happen. MR, over to you. Come over, MR.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So welcome to the launch of this report. We launched it in 3 cities in the US, and we're happy to bring this to India. Been very well received over there, and we thought it's time to bring it to India as well, because we have a whole section on the US-India relationship, and that's the reason we are here. Again, just a quick word on Indiaspora itself. We're founded in 2012. It's a nonprofit, and it's a network and a platform for the global diaspora. And so we have every profession represented: doctors, lawyers, tech CEOs, VCs, philanthropists, academics, and the like. And we also are in multiple countries. So we're not only in the US, but in UK, Canada, Singapore, UAE, Australia, and of course, we have presence in India as well. The Indiaspora organization, the ethos, is really all about service or seva, as we all know it here. And it manifests in many different ways. When the pandemic happened, the Indiaspora community in 1 month raised $15 million for relief to India. And we also raised $1 million for the food banks all around the United States. It was such a dire situation, our community stood up. We also now, through an organization we founded called India Philanthropy Alliance, we also do an annual India Giving Day. We started this last year as 1 day of giving, just using your credit cards. And the first year, we raised $1.4 million. The second year we conducted it was this year. We raised $5.5 million. And next year, we think we'll hit between 10 and 20 million. So again, the money to India flows from the diaspora. And this report that we're going to launch today will show you a lot more about the impact that the diaspora has, not just on the US, but also on India itself. The other thing I want to announce today as well is we are launching a new forum. As you know, we had the G20 forum here last year. We were the only diaspora organization invited by the Indian government to do a G20 forum. And we had 300 leaders there from 26 countries. And some of you who came there remember we had a wall of flags from all these different countries. And it was so well received, we decided that we are now going to create a new platform. We're calling it the Indiaspora Forum for Good. And this is a forum where we want to get the global diaspora together. CEOs, philanthropists, academics, authors, politicians, cricket players, Bollywood, Hollywood, kind of get the whole Indian masala together next year. And we're going to really discuss, if you can go back, please, we're going to discuss all the difficult problems in the world. And what do we mean by that? You know, There's, of course, entrepreneurship, AI, climate, heritage. There's so many areas that the diaspora as a group can contribute to new models for the world. And we will be announcing and launching a lot of new ideas at this event next year. And if you go to the next slide, it's going to be February 23rd to the 26th. It's an invitation-only forum. We expect 300 to 500 people to come to Abu Dhabi and Dubai. It's going to be 3 days in Abu Dhabi and an optional day in Dubai. And it'll be held next year as an invitation-only forum. Just wanted to put that out there. For people who are interested, they can contact us as well. Now on to the report itself. So this was an undertaking that was instigated by some of our friends a couple of years ago who said, you know, what does the Indian community do in the US? We make a lot of money. We are a lot of doctors, a lot of tech people, a lot of different things. But is this community, who are we, what do we do, and so forth. And so we decided that we needed to actually do a formal report and do it with a partner who had the chops to actually be a professional team and really work with us. And we found BCG to be an amazing partner for us. They put an extraordinary team together that worked night and day to pull off this report. And in the spirit of cooperation and collaboration, I want to get Neeraj Agarwal from BCG, who heads up the Asia-Pacific operations, to come up as well. Neeraj? And so we're going to co-present this report in short form. And there's also a QR code, and you can get the entire report online, downloaded to your phone or to your computer as well. So who are Indian Americans? We have 5.1 million people in the U.S., and about, I think, 60% are born outside the U.S., and 40% are born in the U.S. So it's a split that I don't think will change that much as we move up. But we're not going to bore you with 40 metrics that we've created. We're only going to do 2 per slide, and it's going to be a quiz. You've got to remember 2 per slide at the end of this presentation. So the thing here I want to do is the 5.1 million is the one metric I want to focus on. And the second one is 70%. 78% of Indian Americans have a bachelor's degree or higher. Okay? It's an enormous percentage in the population. So that's who we are. If you move on to the next slide here, Neeraj, sorry, if we
go back.
Yeah.
So, Amar, thanks. So firstly, as we did this along with Indiaspora, one of the things I realized is we all know parts of the puzzle, but the expanse of the contributions is really, really remarkable. And that's what hopefully as we go through these few pages, you'll get a flavor of that. So to touch upon in the spirit of two data points per slide, so I want to draw your attention to the number 16. So of the Fortune 500 companies, there are 16 CEOs who are Indians. I think while that itself is staggering, what I want to talk about is the number below it. You know, if you go to the CEO -1 levels in these companies, the percentages are even higher. So if I talk about my own company in BCG, we have our global exec committee, which is 14 people. 4 of them are Indians, you know, just to give a number. And I would not be out of order to say from many of these companies you've seen, the numbers look remarkably similar. So this number, if at all, is on the rise in years to come. The one I would highlight. The other one is the number at the very bottom. So Amar talked about the fact that there are 1.5% Indians in America, but the tax contribution is 5 to 6%. And if you were to try to visualize that in dollars, this community gives $300 billion in taxes every year. You know, so that's a contribution as well, to just give you the enormity of it.
Awesome. On to the next slide here.
Okay. All right, so this one I will also pick up. The number I'm really, really energized by on this page is the number on the top right. 10%. 10% of US patents have been where Indian is a co-inventor. It's, again, a very sizable number, and these are in areas like solving for cancer, biochemistry, many of the most exciting, difficult areas of the future. That's where you'll find the action. The other number I like to highlight is at the very bottom of the page. I'm very passionate about education and higher education in particular. So 22,000 people, faculty members in US universities now, are Indians or of Indian origin. So that's another staggering number. Of course, many other numbers catch. And as Amar said, at the end, we'll come back and ask you one or two questions to see if you're paying attention or not.
And you can imagine the impact. Again, every metric we do here is to talk about the impact, not about the success, to translate that into what it means for the country, for society, for India, as well as the U.S. So the 22,000 means several million college students in the U.S. are taught by Indian professors.
Actually, yeah. The number of people
Right?
touched is gigantic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. Moving on, this is my favorite slide. This is the masala slide, from cuisine to cricket. Okay? So there are 6,000 Indian restaurants in the U.S. 6,000. It's 3% of the Michelin Guide restaurants are Indian. So these, in fact, recently we were at the India-Pakistan match, and then the India-USA match with 35,000 people, full stadiums in New York City for these cricket matches, right? And it was amazing to see that kind of turnout for cricket in the United States. So I would say food and cricket are two things we're good at. And let me pick one more number here. I have to pick that number. Which one should I pick?
Give you a hint? No.
I would say that the other thing is the spelling bee. The spelling bee, 28 out of the last 34 winners have been Indians, right? And once there were, this time there was actually a bake-off or spell-off, as they called it, where within 1 minute they had to spell like 30 words or 40 words. I mean, it was just crazy, right? And by the way, the first spelling bee champion is a member of Indiaspora. So that's another feather in our cap. So the next one, this came to, everybody talks about Indian Americans making the highest income in the United States. We make 2 times the average income of the American. But we really want to translate that into philanthropy. The Indian Americans give $1.5 billion a year to philanthropic causes. And a lot of that money also comes and finds its way to Indian nonprofits as well, right? So I think this is incredible. And also Indian Americans, you saw 78% had a bachelor's degree. We put money where our mouth is. So in the past 20 years, $3 billion has gone into donations and contribution to US universities, and also now to Indian universities as well. Recently, you've seen gifts to IIT Bombay, IIT Madras, and different universities. I know you're part of a Plaksha University. A lot of Americans have Indian Americans have donated to that. So again, education is key, and we put our money there.
And just Amar, staying on this, I think Plaksha, Ashoka, absolutely on the Indian University side, but also Akshay Patra, Pratham. So there's been a lot of, all of them are effectively trying to solve for education. I see a lot of resonance there. And I also feel on this slide that this is very early days. This is going to grow many-fold from here. That's the other feeling I do get. Okay, this one I had not realized. When I looked at the numbers, the one on the top left, so 150 people of Indian Americans were holding senior public service positions, and 40 of them were Senate appointees. That means there were bipartisan support for them. That's a very sizable number. That's about, what, 6% of the positions? And that's, obviously, you hear about Kamala Harris and Usha Vance and all those people, but this number by itself shows that there is fertile ground for many more of those kinds to come in years going forward. The other one is on the bottom right. Take the major policy-making organizations, World Bank, IMF, WHO. In many of those places, some of the key leaders have been people of the diaspora, and they are making seminal contributions now and in years to come.
Yeah. And one more important thing. You always hear sometimes in an emergency, is there a doctor in the room, right? 10% of all physicians in the US are Indians, and they serve 30% of the patients in the United States. So anybody in the US I talk to, they say, yeah, my doctor is Indian, right? And so again, that's a huge service to American society. And in fact, many of these doctors initially get started in rural areas, not in the big cities. And in fact, we interviewed a doctor from rural Pennsylvania. He has delivered 8,000 babies in his lifetime. 8,000 babies delivered in rural Pennsylvania. And that's the kind of impact the Indian community has.
But if you take doctors, you take public positions, you take corporate leaders, you take patents and others, the faculty, the number of people touched is many multipliers of that, right? I mean, it's not only the 5 or 10% that are doing this, then what they touch is normally 3 to 5 times of that, which is exactly what MR just called out. And this one is hugely important. We're living in the world where trade lines are getting harder, as you know, but actually the Indian-American trade line, and the master is here, I'm sure he'll touch upon this, is growing and is promising, and I think the numbers from here can go, again, I deeply believe, many, many-fold. In the world of tomorrow, there are huge areas of collaboration between the two, and I think, as the Indiaspora Forum for Good also calls out, whether it is AI, whether it's climate, whether it's all of those things, I think this cooperation is going to grow. And we do as BCG a trade model, where we see which of the trade lines are going to grow the fastest. The India-US trade line is something which gets called out as one of the fastest growing trade line in the world from our modeling as we think about for 2030. The one other number you cannot but highlight is the remittance number. This one we all know, but again, the size is really staggering. It's in the bottom of the page. You would see it's huge. The other number which you may not know is of the unicorns in India, how many of them have been incubated by Indians who've been educated in the United States. And that number is also 25%, so it's very sizable, again. And I love the spirit of cooperation coming through in this.
And one more, if you dig into the 26 billion in remittances, in the old days, the remittances typically came from the Gulf countries and so forth, when a lot of labor sent money back. But this 26 billion is coming from the United States. This is coming from the rich diaspora, buying property here, investing in markets here, investing in companies. And in fact, a few months ago, one of the news stories that went viral, there was in Gurgaon, there's an apartment, brand new luxury apartment complex, where in 3 days they sold out 1,100 units. But the hidden story there was 250 of those were bought from, by the NRI people, right? So you can see the amount of wealth coming back and being invested in India itself. So that is in a nutshell some of the metrics.
I'm going to ask one question. You want to ask a pop question?
You do.
Okay, so if you're noticing, how many Indian movies have made more than $1 million in the United States? It was on the slides. Anybody, if you didn't see it, it's fine, you can guess. How many Indian movies made more than $1 million in US?
This past year, yeah. Nobody knows.
Nobody wants to guess? 3? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, forever.
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 Yeah.
You're roughly there, 96. Wow. So roughly 100 movies. So that's another part of the impact we haven't talked about as much, which is really, really getting sizable as well.
Absolutely. And there's so much more to this report. The entire report is on the Indiaspora website. There's a QR code. Just download it. And the important thing we're also doing is, please share this not just with your Indian community, please share this with your non-Indian community, because that's where we want to really have this narrative reach out to, so other people, whether it's someone in the United States or any other country, looks at Indians in a different way after reading this report, right?
And Amar, if I can take one. So I think if you look at the tagline, small community, big contributions, I think that comes through very clearly. But what I really love about this title is the boundless horizons. I think we're just getting started, and the horizons are truly boundless.
And we want to thank again Neeraj and the BCG team for the amazing job you've done with the report. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
And we plan to do other reports of this kind in other diaspora countries as well. So now on to the next speaker, who just arrived from the Olympics. I think, what else? He was a mayor of the second largest city in the US, but he knows more about Olympics than all of us here combined. Not only was he the mayor of the second largest city, but he also brought the Olympics to his hometown of Los Angeles, right? But not only that, ladies and gentlemen, he not only brought the Olympics to LA, he made sure that cricket is going to be an Olympic sport in 2028. So please welcome Ambassador Eric Garcetti.
Well, thank you, MR, and good morning to everyone, and namaskar. Nice to see you all. I got in at 2 a.m. this morning, so I'm going to try to be articulate. I'm going to try to be coherent, but I am still buzzing from the incredible last few days. I left on Thursday night, actually Friday morning, to go just for 3 days to the Olympics. After MR mentioned I had worked so hard in my previous job to bring the Olympics back to America. We haven't had a summer game since 1996 in Atlanta, and to witness the entire world come together. And I flew back with the Indian Olympic team. Many were on my flight, including the double bronze medalist shooter. I saw so many families and people who really saw that moment which borders dissolve and human beings become human beings, that we root for each other. In fact, in the javelin, which I know was tough for India, but at the same time, I love the interviews of the mothers of the gold and silver medalists who said, we were praying for each other's sons, that at a moment when we feel and see conflict in the world, whether it was North Koreans and South Koreans eating side by side, whether it was the two American gymnasts who were bowing down to an amazing gymnast from Brazil, you see that spirit of who we are at our best when we do cross borders, when we do connect the world, when we do find our common humanity. And I really think that's the theme of today that links where I've come from. Now that we have the flag, I witnessed the flag being given from the mayor of Paris to the mayor of Los Angeles, who then, as some of you might have watched, gave it to our informal Hollywood mayor, Tom Cruise, who took it off on a motorcycle all the way to the beaches of Southern California. So I invite you all in 2028, please come to Los Angeles. It's a great Indian city, by the way, full of Indian Americans and people of Indian heritage that makes it such a special town, my hometown. And I want to thank Indiaspora. MR, this is probably the 4th city in a year we've seen each other, maybe 8th time. You, the board, Srikumar here, do such an amazing job to network. As you said, it's both a network and a platform. And we never value, in terms of a market capitalization, an organization like this, but I, needless to say, think that Indiaspora would be a unicorn if we had a valuation in its impact that it has had, not just on people of Indian descent, but on bringing India to the world. And specifically for me as the US-India ambassador, to be able to see this bridge that we are building strengthened every single day by the work of your organization. It's also a diplomatic forum, because anytime you can get the US-India Business Council and the Strategic Partnership Forum together, that's a diplomatic coup. So thank you to BCG for the great work, Neeraj, that you have done to make this report so interesting, I think, for all of us. And to Rajan, to the entire board, Ricky, Kedge, all the people who are making this such a special launch here today in Delhi. You mentioned the cricket in New York, and I saw you there. I went back to Nassau County, just outside New York City, where a temporary cricket stadium had been built for the T20 World Cup this year. And I went to the US-India match, and we all heard the joke, but it was real. There was India's A team and India's H1B team playing each other. And we played it perfectly, by the way. We almost beat India, but then thankfully lost to India, because I couldn't have returned here to Delhi had we actually beaten India. We beat Pakistan, which was unheard of. In the lead-up, we beat Bangladesh. And it really was a reflection of what America has become. This isn't just a report of how Indians have influenced America. It is a reflection of America itself in this report. And to know Indian Americans is to know America, just as it is in Oman, just as it is in France, just as it is in Canada, just as it is in country after country around the world, where people of Indian descent are making those countries strong, whether it's in Oman, where Hindi is essentially the first national language now. When you go places and you see the leadership, recently in the UK, who would have ever thought in 1947 that the leader of the colonizing country would be a descendant of those who were colonized up until recently. I know there was an election and it's changed, but that was such a powerful thing to have an Indian-British prime minister. And now for us to see, I spent the 3 days, our official head of delegation was our first second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, who's a dear friend from Los Angeles, who is the husband of a daughter of India, Kamala Harris, who is the first Indian American to be one of the 2 main parties nominee for President of the United States. The second, the Vice President's second lady, if it would be a Republican who wins, is also a daughter of India. You see the profundity in our country of what these ties have meant politically, culturally, economically, in healthcare, in business, in the nonprofit, political world, we see the way that this report is actually a report not just of the present, but it is of the future. And I've said if you want to see the future, come to India. If you want to work on the future, come to India. If you want to co-author that future, come to India. But I'll also say the inverse. If you want to see the future of America, understand the Indian-American community, and you will see where we are headed. By the way, there's one statistic you didn't pull out here in this great thing, which is that 30% of the diaspora in America are not married. So I think Auntie Seema has her work cut out for her. And there's a lot of eligible men and women for marriage. Just putting that out there to all the parents who I'm sure are excited about that. The 230 years of collaboration between our countries, and I say that because this was always a country even when it wasn't independent. In fact, our second consulate in the world, after we were a newly independent country, after one was established in Lyon, France, was here in Kolkata. 1792, Benjamin Joy was appointed to be the first emissary from the United States to India. Because it was 1792, he arrived in 1794. It took him that long to get there. But we have ever since then strengthened those ties, and they have been a force for good in the world. We can see it in the numbers that were reflected today, here with over $200 billion of trade. More than 550 Indian nationals who work at the United States National Institutes of Health in intramural laboratories, the largest number of scientists from Asia who are curing diseases, who are working together on things like the Cancer Moonshot, which we just hosted last week, a wonderful convening of, and brought a Nobel Prize winner who started immunology really as a practice of curing cancer. I saw it myself when we recently were in Pune at the Serum Institute and saw how the United States had helped develop a vaccine for malaria, a disease that takes a child every minute in Africa. And many people in this country and other countries are afflicted by it. And we were able to see how that innovation, together with the platform of what they could do at the Serum Institute, we were loading the first doses of that vaccine, of a brand new vaccine we developed together to be able to save lives in the world. Which is why many of you have heard me say this relationship between the US and India is not a relationship of addition. It's not India plus the US. It's a relationship of multiplication. When we get together, it's India times the US, saving lives, contributing to well-being, going to third countries to see what we can do, and often met, by the way, by a diaspora in those third countries. Quick story, USAID has a program that brings together the government of India and the government of America called TRIDEP. It's the Trilateral Development Partnership. And we go into we go into third countries, and recently we had, for the first time, we had doctors, most of them of Indian heritage and nurses, from Fiji, whose parents and grandparents and great-grandparents had immigrated from India. They're now healthcare workers in Fiji, and they work in remote islands where sometimes the healthcare can't get there quickly enough. So India, with its brilliance, was training, using United States resources in partnership, these health professionals in telemedicine, in remote islands to save lives via the advances that India and the United States have pioneered. Again, an example of this multiplicative relationship, saving lives and taking advantage of this diaspora. You mentioned yoga here. I've, for 20 years, woken up with Surya Namaskars and practiced yoga myself, seen the impact of health on our lives, of this cultural link that we have. In space, we see an Indian American right now in space, who, those of you that were at our National Day, Sunita Williams gave a message live from space to us here in Delhi. And soon we'll have an Indian astronaut later this year or early next year go up in an American capsule to the International Space Station. And one of the most exquisite technology satellites ever built, NISAR, between NASA and ISRO, will go up to take heed of the health of our planet. Just as a person goes to the doctor's office for its vital signs, this satellite will be able to assess the health of our planet in the midst of climate change and save hundreds of millions of lives, the US and India together. And I love, of course, as an official in government, to see how many Indian Americans, not just our vice president, but others, whether it's the head, our Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, who's going to be here later this summer, whether it's the head of highways, the head of our National Science Foundation, the head of our anti-narcotics policy, the head of our presidential personnel, which is the person who hires everybody for the White House, the head speechwriter for President Biden. You can go on and on through Indian Americans that literally are helping us run the country, bringing our values and our principles to the world and bringing progress to each one of us as well. And the diaspora continues to grow. I always quote that 1.5% and roughly 5 to 6% of our tax base. But that story of Indians just coming to the United States, I loved in the report how you're talking about how that flow is also sometimes reversing. How we see, for instance, in this past year, not just American companies that invest in the United States, but at Select USA, run by an Indian American, by the way, the largest Commerce Department investment gathering, which invites the entire world to invest in America. Second year running, biggest delegation, and the biggest ever from India, with not only the biggest number of people, but the biggest dollar amount being invested in America, in American jobs, in factories that were shut down, in mines that were no longer working, in steel mills that had gone cold. This is the power of this diaspora coming together. We met recently with Chris Singh, who is an Indian immigrant who runs Holtec, a small modular reactor and nuclear power company that's firing up the first decommissioned nuclear plant in America, in Michigan. Because it's also already ready to go, he's going to have the first small modular reactor nuclear power plant in America built there this decade. And he wants to bring that here, where he's already building components in India for nuclear power, which can help us reduce our dependence on things like coal, gas, oil, which are causing the climate crisis. So this report is not just about numbers. It is about narratives. It is not just the statistics. It is the stories, the flesh and blood and the human beings behind all of this that we see together. Whether it's our Quad Fellowships, whether it's our Academy for Women Entrepreneurs, whether it's the U.S.-India Education Foundation that oversees the illustrious Fulbright scholarships and so much more, we see that successful and committed programs and individuals are making this bridge stronger than it has ever been before. So my friends, we stand at an inflection point. I was asked by the second gentleman, by a senator that was with us, some other friends from Congress when I was in Paris, so tell me, what's the job really like? And in my private moments, I say nothing different than what I say here in public. This is the best job in the world that I could have, at the best country, at the best time, the best relationship, at the best moment. The US and India together have that power to turn that old expression, alag desh, alag rivage, to something new, as I've said, which is, as we look at not only two countries with different customs, now increasingly it's do desh, thinking ek dil. We have one heart. We may be two countries, but we have the same spirit. We may have two proud nations, independent, not always overlapping in everything we do, but that core of what we do, two democracies who are able to change and narrate and write that next chapter in our history. There ain't no stopping us now. So Indiaspora, thank you for highlighting that, for inspiring us. We see, America sees its future with India. And as the ambassador here, I can see that India sees its future linking arms with America as well, strategically, economically, technologically, but most importantly, because of you, the people that are the bridge between US and India. Dhanyavad. Thank you so much.
That was an amazing speech. Thank you, Ambassador. Really, you're always so inspirational and motivating to all of us. And one of the things that the Ambassador mentioned was the fact that it's the people. The metrics are there, but the narrative comes from the people. And so with the Indiaspora Impact Report, we also have a section called Inspiring Icons. And these are people we've featured who are Indian Americans in all facets of life. The Ambassador mentioned the NSF director. People like that are all in our interview list, and they're on a special page called Indiaspora Inspiring Icons. I think there's a QR code for that page as well. But do go visit it. There are musicians, there are chefs, there are all kinds of people who are part of American society. So do take a look at that. Now we have a special friend who is a 3-time Grammy Award winner. He's also the UN Goodwill Ambassador, but he's also a really dear friend of Indiaspora. He performed at the Indiaspora 10th Anniversary Forum about a couple of years ago in Gurgaon, just up the street, I guess, and had an amazing energy, amazing concert. But he had a new project that he wants to talk to us about. And so without further ado, please welcome my good friend, Ricky Cage.
Namaskar, everyone. Namaskar, everyone. Thank you so much. It's a huge honor for me to be here. Thank you to Indiaspora for this opportunity. So last year I had created this rendition of the Indian National Anthem, where I had conducted a 100-piece British orchestra, the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, performing the Indian National Anthem. It was a huge privilege to conduct the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, my favorite orchestra in the whole world. But also it was a 100-piece British orchestra and an Indian composer conducting the British orchestra, performing the Indian National Anthem. So that was also pretty amazing. But nevertheless, I've worked with orchestras all over the world, and the one thing that I always find when I watch an orchestra performing is that there are so many instruments in an orchestra. You have a violin, which is a soft instrument, then you have a timpani, which is a loud percussion instrument, you have a harp, which is a soft instrument, you have a bassoon, which is a really loud instrument, and all of these instruments have got their own unique identity. Each instrument is not trying to be another instrument. They are basically maintaining their own unique identity, but when all of these instruments play together, they play together in beautiful harmony, and it sounds absolutely amazing. And so whenever I look at an orchestra, whenever I perform with an orchestra, the one thing that comes to my mind is this is what India is. India has got so many people from diverse backgrounds, cultures, traditions, religions, culinary tastes, skin color. But at the same time, everybody come together beautifully as one Bharat, and that is the beauty of our country. So that particular rendition of the national anthem was very successful. Our Honorable Indian Prime Minister also tweeted it, and I felt that it philosophically defined what India was all about. But then later on, I felt that I needed to create another version of the anthem which sonically defined what India was all about. So I got in touch with the best, the most legendary classical musicians of India, at least my favorite classical musicians of India from the north and the south. We got Pandit Hariprasad Chaurasia, absolute legend, Rakesh Chaurasia, Aman Anayan, Rahul Sharma, Sheikh Mehboob and Khalisi Mehboob, Nadaswaram players, Giridhar Udupa and Jayanti Kumresh, Veena player, brought all of them together, and they brought in their magic to the national anthem. But above that, over and above that, what we did was that we recorded a choir of 14,000 children, from tribal communities. We recorded them in Odisha at the Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences in a single stadium. So we pretty much converted that entire stadium into a professional recording studio with over 200 microphones, with state-of-the-art recording equipment, and that became the anthem. So basically it is the British orchestra, it is the amazing legendary Indian classical musicians, the 14,000 children, and we are releasing this tomorrow on the 14th of August at 5 p.m. on the eve of Independence Day. So we are going to be showcasing a special exclusive preview to all of you, a pre-release preview. So just a request that if all my friends in the media could turn off your cameras just for this 1.5 minutes while we play this particular anthem. It's a gift to everybody in India, every Indian, every person who appreciates India all over the world. We've withdrawn all copyright, all need for royalty or permission. You can use it for whatever purposes you want once it releases tomorrow at 5 p.m. So if you could please turn off the cameras, and also if you would please indulge me, if you're physically able to stand up, if you could stand up for the Indian national anthem, and if you could dim the lights. Here is the Indian national anthem. Thank you so much. Please share it tomorrow when it comes out at 5 p.m. And also, I forgot to mention, we won a Guinness World Record for this attempt. Anyway, thank you so much.
Ricky, that was awesome. And I don't know about others, but at least I had a lump in my throat as I kind of heard that. So thank you for doing this and thank you for sharing. We wanted to also take a few minutes and hear from you if you have any lived experiences of, we showed a few statistics and stories, but it's ultimately all about lived experiences and unique experiences. If a few of you want to volunteer to share a small story, anecdote, which truly talks to about this community with big contributions, we'd love to hear that. So I'm not looking at anybody. I can cold call some people, but otherwise I'm very happy if a few of you put your hand up and share a story or two. Can we have a mic available? Oh, we have a mic. So I'm sure the ambassador can add more stories, but anybody else would love to share an anecdote or two? All right, thank you very much for being the first volunteer. So I'm sure that'll open up. So please share your story.
Hi.
And introduce yourself as well.
Yes. Good morning. I'm Dr. Smriti Pahwa, and I work with Arogya World, an organization led by Dr. Nalini Saligram, and who are members of India Philanthropy Alliance. And Nalini talks so highly about Indiaspora and all the work that you do. So I have been in India all my life, but I come from the social impact sector. And last 25 years, I worked across, with researchers with Indian origin and also with philanthropists with Indian origins. And if I were to kind of, one thing striking that comes to my mind is the passion with which people who are not in India but with Indian origin, no matter what generation, they feel for the country. So I've always been moved by that passion. And one thing that, and while we were looking at all the statistics, please don't quiz me on that, but one thing that I was really going through my head was, if there is a way to channel all that passion, because sometimes passion comes with bias and passion comes with, I hail from that particular area, so I need to, which is natural, we are human. But I think statistics like this and putting science and facts and data to it is a good way of, shaping and streamlining that passion and trying to organize the philanthropic and other resource, kind of initiatives to progress areas in India. And like Ambassador said, India plus US is not the case. It's India and multiplied with the US. So I think sky is the limit, and big congratulations on the report. And the key word that I really am looking at is boundless horizons. So truly, I think it's just a start with objectivity, with data, and so much wisdom across the community. I think sky is the limit. So I'm really hopeful. Thank you.
So thank you for sharing that. So actually that got me thinking. There's a phrase we often use in my firm, which is to make any change happen, the head, the heart, and the hands need to work in tandem. So I think the report touches a lot on the head and the hands, but I think there's this part of the heart and the passion which you talked about, which I think brings the glue together and makes true magic happen. So thank you for sharing that. Would love to hear a couple more if somebody else is, if that inspired you. Okay, please, let's go there. And Vikash and Ashish, I may come for you, so just advance warning. Please.
Hi, good morning. My name is Astha Verma. I have actually lived across the three very prominent regions that Ambassador mentioned, in California, in the UAE, as well as India. And I'm a filmmaker by profession, and this report is so interesting to me because currently we're working on something which really, is addressing the notion of boundless horizons, where we are bringing out stories from the Indian diaspora across the globe, split between multiple, seasons, and we really hope that this reaches to the people from the Indian diaspora globally. The biggest, I think, takeaway from a report like this is not only does it provide very solid data to anyone who is, out there and bringing out this to everyone globally, but also is able to facilitate more stories that can actually come to us. So thank you so much for bringing this and having us here. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. All right, one more. Okay, we'll come to you. Piyush, you have something you want to say? No?
Yeah, can I?
Yeah, please go for
Hi,
it.
my name is Meera Harish. I work at an organization called Sattva, which is an impact consulting firm. But I wanted to just refer to what the ambassador mentioned of not the US, but another country, Fiji. Ambassador, I used to work for the Tata Group in their consumer durable business 25 years ago. And we launched one of our consumer durable brands in Fiji. The largest private sector group in Fiji distributing consumer durables and the best brands in the world is actually the Indian diaspora. The Tatas of Fiji called the Tapu Group. And this is really going back 26 years, and it just brings back memories of what the Indian diaspora does across the world. And I just wanted to refer to Fiji as in not a recent story, but a story that's 25 years and beyond that, actually. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And that actually, I flew in from Jakarta today morning, and I was meeting some of the new appointees in the government in Indonesia yesterday. And one thing which really touched a chord was the fact that they look up to India for inspiration and learning on a lot of areas in this. So there's also a role which we didn't call out as much as in India being a role model for other nations to emulate as well, which I think also comes out a lot. So they called out obviously the digital identity and the Aadhaar work, but more broadly on the complexity of running a center, state, province kind of a model, which is very unique, complex politics, which they want to learn from India as well. That was nice to hear. Okay, we had more hands there, please.
Thank you, Neeraj. My name is Amit Shahi, and I run a small business in Davos, Switzerland, enabling governments and corporations to tell their stories to the audience in Davos. About 10 years ago, we were organizing an event for the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, in Davos. And one of our speakers was an Indian American called Trivahini Bradu. And she was a World Economic Forum technology pioneer. So once the event was over, I was walking her out of the venue. And I told her that, about 20 years ago, I had a road accident. And I was paralyzed for 9 months. And the physiotherapist who helped me come back onto my feet also had the same surname, Bradu, and he was from Kashmir. So she said, hang on a minute. She took out her mobile phone and put me in touch with Dr. Bradu, who happened to be her father's younger brother. So this is just an example of where you can run into an accomplished Indian, whether it's on the streets of Davos or anywhere in the world. So this is a sterling example of how people from the diaspora are contributing to our well-being in every part of the world. Thank you.
No, thanks for sharing. Okay, we have Sarika there. Maybe we'll come to you, Sarika. But just before we go to Sarika, I think I've been to Davos many times in the recent years. And actually, MR, where is MR? MR probably stepped out to get the minister. But I think we should put a picture of that in the report. If you walked on the main alleyway or the main road where Davos really happens, with every passing year, the share of India on that road is just ever increasing. So it just shows also the arrival in a very different way. It manifests itself. When you see it, you kind of visually feel it. Sorry, the mic there.
Yeah, hi. Thanks a lot, Neeraj. This is Sarika here. I work for Palaksha University. But my relationship or my tryst with the US Embassy started something like 12 years ago. I was moving as a corporate banker towards a social entrepreneurship. And at that point of time, when I was just starting my entrepreneurial journey, I got nominated by the US Embassy for the Fortune program. And at that point of time, I was introduced to such a strong network of women leaders across the globe who not only supported us in our entrepreneurial journey, but the US Embassy and the Fortune and the Vital Voices program continued supporting it even till then. 2 weeks later, we are actually all meeting in Sri Lanka, and these are women leaders from across the globe. The second tryst with the India diaspora was when I joined Palaksha University, which is a very unique collective philanthropic effort which we are trying to build a legacy for the future generations in India. I believe the warmth and the support which we received from this network across the globe, wherever we visited, in the US, Seattle, New York, the India Diaspora Network and the members, they have always been welcoming us with open arms. So a really big thank you to all of them.
Thanks, Sarika. Okay, yeah, to you, and then I'll go to Vikash. Maybe, probably the last few comments, unless the minister is still. Yeah, please, if you can get the mic there. He had his hand up earlier.
Hi, I'm Anirudh. You know, first of all, thank you for the event. It's really amazing. I've been to a lot of Indiaspora events. I'll share two stories. So, I've been a student in the US since '96, and the kind of respect that Indians have today is amazing, and a large part goes to the Indiaspora. So a big round of applause to that. You know, whenever we go to the US, you feel like a star. And before you used to be scared, or I don't know, you used to feel a little unsure. And the second is that we run an organization called Khushi in India, which we take care of more than 230,000 kids a year, you know, remedial education. And about a few years ago, we went to the Bay Area and we opened arms and said, you know, come on, help us. And you will not believe people who were not even, you know, connected to the villages where we work. We have raised millions of dollars, and we keep on doing every year, going to the US. So a big thank you to Indiaspora for supporting us and supporting our cause. Thank you.
All right, so look, thank you for that. Vikash, maybe we pass on that, if that's okay. So Amar, if you want to come up as well, and Shri, come up, you should do this. But a very, very warm welcome to our External Affairs Minister, Mr. Jaishankar. Thank you very much, sir, for coming. So.
Thank you, Neeraj. Now, we heard the Ambassador. Thank you once again, Ambassador, for the terrific speech you did. Now, we have the pleasure of inviting Dr. S. Jaishankar, Minister for External Affairs, Government of India. MR, please come up, and Rajan, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Dr. Jaishankar, for being here with us today. You know, it's always a pleasure to have a conversation around building bridges, and what Indiaspora and the diaspora has done, you know, over the years, both as an organization and as a community, is actually build bridges. And as you see, you know, boundless horizons, you know, from what can emerge from this relationship. So again, thank you for being here with us. You know, let me begin by, you know, asking you, you spent a lot of time in the US yourself. You know, you're ambassador there, and you understand the dynamic of the diaspora. And, you know, you've also engaged from both sides. So when you go to the US, really, what do you do?
Meet the diaspora.
What do you enjoy doing in the US, which you only do in...
No, but look, I went to the US the first time early 80s. And I don't know how many of you from India would have been there that early. And it was very different. I mean, you didn't have that many Indians. Even the Indians who were there were not necessarily, you know, had the positions and I would say the skill sets which made them as prominent as they have now become. So in that sense, our own branding in American eyes was very different then. And the community itself was relatively, you know, they were in certain narrow pockets doing a few things. So it's actually been a sea change. And you know, so when you ask me what do I do when I go there, I mean, a lot of it is really, you know, catch up with friends. And you know, I mean, the US is the US. There are some things in the US which are very peculiarly American. I mean, you don't get it anywhere else, including I mean, it could be American food. It's, you know, I mean, there are a lot of things. Don't get me going there.
No, thank you, thank you. You know, it's I just wanted to kickstart that before we get into, you know, more serious stuff, because, you know, there's so much going on in the world, Minister, nowadays, and, you know, you've talked about, you know, a fast-changing, disruptive world, so many things happening. So how do you see, you know, the world? I know you've just come back and you're meeting so many people around the world, and before we go deeper into the diaspora, your view on the world today, and really what's on top of your mind?
Well, look, if you ask me my view of the world, I'm an optimistic person, and generally tend to think of solutions to problems rather than the problems which come out of solutions. But I would say with you know, a great deal of sobriety that we are going through an exceptionally difficult period. I mean, if I were to say give a 5-year forecast, it would be a very grim forecast for the next 5 years. And there, I think the answers are there. I mean, you know, you have what you see happening in the Middle East, what you see happening in Ukraine, what you see happening in Southeast Asia, East Asia, the continued impact of the COVID, which those of us who have come out of it take for granted, but many have not come out of it. Then, you know, the kind of economic challenges which you see in the world, you see more and more countries struggling, you know, their trade is getting difficult, facing foreign exchange shortages. So, you know, disruptions of various kinds, I mean, like what was happening in the Red Sea, climate events which are no longer, you know, just news. I mean, they have globally disruptive consequences, sometimes entire regions of countries being basically made dysfunction because of a climate event. So if you ask me, if you connect all these dots and say, okay, what do you see? I see, frankly, a very, very challenging scenario, and which to me is actually a very big case for India-US ties, because in this kind of situation, it's really, in a way, those with the willingness and the ability and the comfort of working with each other who have to step forward. And I don't think, you know, it can't be done the old-fashioned way that you have agreements and treaties and arrangements. Life is moving too fast for that. I mean, there's a problem. If you don't have an answer in the next 48 hours, you're irrelevant to that problem.
And that impact is coming on business, everything, because geopolitics, economics, technology choices,
sure.
all are interlinked, right?
I mean, in a way, I mean, that too is, by the way, I mean, I didn't mention that, but that too, I think, is part of the more complicated world, which is, I mean, technology actually has eroded so many lines, you know, the domestic line and the external line, the efficiency line and the privacy line, in a way. So there's a kind of a flip side to everything. And I would say, in fact, that kind of world, the intensity of it, how deep it gets into our lives, the speed of it, I think all of which actually makes for a very different case, really, for relationships. So when you know, I'm now saying this as an Indian, and I'm sure somebody in the US or in any other country is doing an equivalent calculation. I think today it's necessary to go back to the drawing board and to look at different relationships and say, okay, in this very tough scenario, with these, you know, as I say, climate challenges, technology challenges, economic dependency challenges, the globalization, the pluses and minuses of it. How do you rework every relationship to get the optimum out of it. And there will be a kind of a rebalancing of relationships. I mean, there will be some which will suddenly become much more important, some which will become more worrisome, some where, you know, you start to look at it with completely fresh eyes. So all of that is taking place.
So this year, as you know, Minister, what 60% of the world has had elections, but I come from the U.S. There's one more small one to happen in about 3 months. So what is your take in general with the U.S. elections, and how is India prepared for it and to deal with a new administration?
Well, what is my take on elections? We like elections in this country. We're holding them permanently. So we've just been through one. And by and large, I mean, our elections are a real, in many ways, a test of the candidate, of the public, of the system, and we continuously pass those tests. So, you know, in that sense, this is a country where you will always see people supportive of democratic processes all over the world. In terms of US elections, you know, we generally don't comment on other people's elections because we also hope others don't comment on ours. But as I said, you know, look, the American system will throw up its verdict. And you know, I'm not saying this just as a formality, but if you look over the last 20 odd years, maybe a little bit more, for us, we have every confidence that we will be able to work with the President of the United States, whoever he or she will be.
Good. You know, thank you. So in that regard, you know, moving from that to the impact report we are just launching today, you've been in the U.S., you've lived in the U.S., and some of your relatives are in the U.S., and they're part of the diaspora. So how do you view the Indian diaspora and its role with the U.S.-India relationship? How have you seen, like you said, when you first went, there were hardly anyone, now there are 5.1 million. How do you see the evolution of that and the evolution of the U.S.-India relationship?
You know, I often cite, some of you would have heard me say this before. It's something I read in a very useful book on the India-US relations, that when Nehru first went to America, there were 3,000 Indian Americans. When Indira Gandhi went, first time SPM, it was 30,000. When Rajiv Gandhi went, it was 300,000. When Narendra Modi went, it was 3.3 million. So I mention that because I think, one, there is a quantitative side of it. But I think there's also, as I said, it's the skills, the talent, the contribution which the diaspora has made there, you know. I mean, I still remember this when I was ambassador. I was meeting a very well-known politician, I will tell Eric the name privately later on, from the deep south. And, you know, he actually told me, saying that, look, you know, I had this view of Indians, and then, you know, my wife had some issue, and she went to this doctor who was an Indian, and it was so good. And so why I say this is, people eventually put a face to a country. When we speak about members of the diaspora, now, sometimes people are not conscious of it, okay? I mean, I'm not saying everybody, particularly in America, asks people, okay, what's the country of your origin? I mean, otherwise your conversation would not go beyond that. But by and large, when in America people see the diaspora, members of the diaspora do well, they associate it with their image of India. And that then shapes their views about India. I mean, it is true all over the world, but I would say it is particularly true of the United States, because the United States in many ways is a very unique society, and because it has immigration from so many different sources. It has a way of using its immigration flows to also create a kind of a foreign policy metrics. And I think in that, the diaspora for us has been a very positive factor. You know, in the last, let us say, if we take the late 90s, really as when India-US relationship started to change course, you know, you could say, pick Clinton's visit to India just as a easy reference point and then take it on from there. No question, it's, you know, the geopolitics, you know, end of the Cold War, all of that mattered. But I also think that a very equally powerful parallel happening was actually the growth, you know, H-1B did as much as the end of the Cold War to shape India-US relations.
So, you know, the diaspora, you're talking of how they've impacted the US. But, you know, Prime Minister Modi and the government has a very ambitious Viksit Bharat plan, you know, long 20 years, you know, progress for India and our transformation here to a developed country. How do you see the role of the diaspora? And, you know, diaspora, different countries is different, particularly American diaspora, but even, you know, around the world. What role do you see the diaspora playing in shaping the future of India?
Look, it's not an easy answer to give because it varies, obviously, country by country. It varies time to time, varies domain by domain. You know, again, if I were to do a sort of a broad comparison of diasporas in America, you know, and that's a little presumptuous of me because you people are the diaspora. But what is perhaps a little bit unique about the Indian diaspora, I mean, let's compare it to every other significant ethnic group which came into the United States. I don't think any other major diaspora flow kept as deep a connect with the land of origin as the Indians did. I mean, if you were definitely, we're not even talking of the Irish and the Italians, it was a different era, you know. But if you take, let us say, a lot of the other diaspora flows were people who left their country in adverse political circumstances, people who left it in difficult economic circumstances, you know, societies where there were tensions between the diaspora and the home system, you know. In our case, none of that has happened. In fact, actually, the diaspora and the home country, country of origin, you can say, bonding, has only got deeper. And also, I think somewhere, because there's a certain, you could say, an Indian cultural sort of a cultural system at work, it has also got, because by now you have, in many cases, third generation diaspora out there. Now, again, in many other cases, the dilution of the original identity has been much sharper. That hasn't been, that's comparatively not the case. So I would argue in many ways, actually, the Indian diaspora is quite unique, you know. And because it's unique and because it's kept this bonding so strongly, that I think it's a very powerful bridge. And I'll tell you why I think it's particularly relevant now. If you ask me in this very complicated world, if I were to pick a single issue which I believe is exceptionally important for the relationship and for the world for the next 5 years, I would actually pick in the broader sense, the digital collaboration, you know, the ISET, the AI. I mean, you take the most expansive thing, and it'll just make you happy coming from the Silicon Valley, okay? But the fact is, what will be the connect there? the connect there is actually going to be a very human connect. That, ironically, AI is actually going to require very trusted human relationships for AI collaborations actually to advance internationally. So I would argue that actually, perhaps more than ever before, today the Indian diaspora can create that level of comfort and trust in very, very critical areas, which I think has the ability to propel our relationship to the next level.
That is very true, because a lot of chief ministers from states are coming to the US. Recently we hosted Telangana chief minister. A couple of weeks we're hosting the Tamil Nadu chief minister, and we can see that connect between those states and the diaspora from those states, especially in AI and these ways. That's a good point.
Also I think the young, generation, right? Especially the diaspora, next gen, or you've talked of, many generations. Like I am a product of a third gen who came back to India and, based here. But towards that, I think a lot of the next gen and young gen are, in a way, a little disconnected, right? Because they're trying to figure out how to engage deeper. I mean, there was a discussion of dual citizenship and things like that. Are all of these anything like that that can attract and bring a large part of the diaspora to connect deeper with India?
Look, my own sense is, I'm not saying the dual citizenship issue is irrelevant. It's far more complicated, because this part of the world has a different history. It's not realistic to transpose, let us say, the American template out here. So my sense is that we have to really figure out, as in many other areas, an answer which is relevant to our own circumstance. I would be more focused on the effectiveness and the efficiency of the answer, rather than the formality of it. So if I can find ways by which the diaspora can work, travel, operate, relate more easily, that to me would be much more important, rather than saying, okay, because, do understand, the moment in this, the moment you get into citizenship, a lot of other things come with it, So I would, for example, we would have concerns about what our citizens may be doing in the service of another country. So now when you have a dual citizenship, that raises a very fundamental issue. So I don't think it's as simple as that, make it easy and give dual citizenship. But I take the basic point, which is that the diaspora will want, and I think legitimately will expect, that as our relationship, India and US, gets closer, that it becomes much easier for them. That bridge, the bridge should become broader, easier, smoother, faster. That I get that.
Got it. Minister, last year we held the G20 Forum for the Diaspora in New Delhi. And we had, there are 30 million people, as you know, of Indian origin outside of India. And we had 300 leaders from 26 countries come to Delhi. We had a wall of flags to represent different countries. And next year we're announcing the Indiaspora Forum for Good, where we want to convene 500 leaders of the diaspora coming together. So as India kind of is marching on the path to 100 years of being an independent country, what can the diaspora do to help India in its journey?
I feel there's a lot which can be done, because if you look today at the goals and objectives, in a way, the challenges, because that's what you are addressing, a lot of it has to do in a sense, upgrading skills and talent in India. If one looks even, I mean, you look at the recent budget, for example, the core, a central element of it was really how do we enhance the skills pool, expand the talent base of this country. And this isn't, there's no single answer to it. It's not like you create a skills machine, some of it is education, some of it is corporate, some of it is exchanges. So what I think where the diaspora actually can make a very valuable contribution as we are all moving into a more digital age is really that bond which I see actually as the increasingly central bond between India and the United States, the digital connect between that. To the extent in various areas they can contribute to the strengthening of that, it would help. Now, I give you an example. In the last few years, this country, after years of neglect, has decided to rectify its shortcomings in the field of semiconductors and the associated areas. So if you look today at many of the collaborations which are taking place there, when it comes to foundries or when it comes to ATMP or when it comes to associated skills, when you look at global capability centers which are coming in here, the chip design industry which is growing in this country. To me, that's a great example actually where very key figures of the diaspora have been drivers of this. So I do think that the diaspora definitely, look, where the diaspora helps is in many ways they have a cultural feel for how to get the job done better than those who may be dealing with India for the first time or who may be dealing with it just as a job rather than as something they intuitively know. I think it makes a difference. After all, you look at us, even in diplomacy, part of the reason you are exposed to a foreign environment and study a foreign environment is you instinctively know the answer which somebody who hasn't had exposure there would take longer to figure out. Now, the diaspora people, they slide into it like fish in water. I mean, so they just figure it out like that. And I think that makes a big difference.
Talking of the future and what we
Here's
can
an example.
Yeah. What's that?
I said, here's an example.
No, absolutely. No, thank you. But, again, talking about the future, same thing, and I know we are, running out of time. But, when you talk of India today, right, they said there couldn't be a better time to be young and to be Indian. The ability for India also now to play a much larger role globally, right? Maybe, again, going a little, if you were younger, I mean, not that you're still a youth icon in this country. You were younger in India or you were a young American, you understand both sides. How should the youth of the two countries view this relationship? Or where can, they play a larger role?
Look, I think the youth have been indicating their preference for some time. It's just that the non-youth haven't been listening. And I've been, look,
You mean the old people, the seniors.
Look, I'd actually put it very differently. Some time ago when I was first involved in writing a book, one of my points was that there is a official foreign policy kind of formulation, strategizing. Then there is a view of foreign policy from the street. And if you look at the street sentiment about the United States, I would argue that street sentiment about the United States changed way before official sentiment about the United States changed. And in many ways, and I've, at critical moments, in fact, when there were very, I would say, very animated debates in this country on, what we are doing, those arguing for a stronger relationship with the United States could visibly see that they were getting very strong public support. So I think, look, in the foreign policy world, we use very fancy terms. So, I mean, it helps, that's how we keep everybody else sort of listening to us and believing in us. But just apply common sense yardsticks, okay? Take trade, take investment, take technology, take education, take tourism. Okay, this is an average person's ask of the world. I mean, I don't know if there's anything else I missed out. Okay, maybe culture, what do you see or at your social media? Use these yardsticks and map the relationships. I think you make a very strong case for a very strong India-US relationship. And I think at the end of the day, believe me, youth go much more by sturdy common sense. The older we get, we muddle our heads with too many complex thoughts.
Too much baggage.
Yeah.
On that note, Minister, we have to close the session. Thank you so much for being here, and we're going to launch the report.
May I invite the Ambassador, Eric Garcetti Neeraj, to please join us.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, may I request Ambassador Neeraj? Yeah, please.
Yes, please. You need more than one. Thank you so much, Sri.
Thank you, everyone. We'll break for half an hour coffee break. It's outside, served outside. And please come back by 11:55. Thank you. Come on in. I have now the pleasure of inviting Nivedita Mehra. She's the Managing Director for USISPF based in Delhi. Nivedita, over to you. Please come.
Thank you, Shri. At the outset, let me thank Mr. M.R. Rangaswamy, Chairman and Founder of Indiaspora, for this generous invite to address this distinguished gathering. Well, it's a tough act to follow after the Honorable External Affairs Minister and Ambassador Garcetti have spoken, but nonetheless, we have an important set of themes which are coming up in the next part of the program. First and foremost, again, congratulations to BCG and the Indiaspora team on a fabulous report. I think the title, Small Community, Big Contributions and Boundless Horizons, is truly profound for a number of reasons. We heard earlier today, the community makes up of 1.5% of the American population, but contributes 6% to the GDP by way of taxes. It's a very small community, a prominent community, and one clearly that punches way above its weight. It's perhaps why the American Indian Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy from Illinois famously coined the nomenclature of the Samosa Caucus. Referring to Indian Americans in the Congress, he said, "We may be small, but we are spicy," hence the Samosa Caucus. There's another unique story here. It's not just about the success of the diaspora alone that makes this story special. Indians emigrated across the globe to many different countries and have been successful wherever they've gone. But why is it that the Indian American diaspora in the United States really shines out? To my mind, the American dream has allowed Indians to dream big and follow that dream. In an election year, 2024, where we've got elections across the world, the word power has been used. But really the best use of power is soft power. And the American dream is the best example of soft power of the US. I quote US Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley. She once said when asked why Indians are successful in the US, she responded, "Indian Americans are just good at being Americans." That is integrating, assimilating, and bringing out the best in both nations. So this leads me to an important point. One that organizations like the one I represent, the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, along with others like Indiaspora, are focused on. How do we better organize the collective prowess of the Indian American community? It is the one thing we know that South Asians, the power of the community, the power of organizing, and the power of a collective voice, that for many years has been fairly fragmented for the Indian American community. I remember long back when I started my career lobbying at Capitol Hill on the civil nuclear deal. It was really hard to get a collective voice of Indian Americans behind us. Similarly, now as we move forward to the next generation of themes, supply chain security, technology partnership, which you'll hear about more today, or facilitate the movement of professionals, an organized Indian diaspora will have an important role to play. Indian Americans contributed more than $3 million to the 2020 presidential campaigns, often more than the coveted donors from Hollywood. So I believe often that this community is underutilized, it's a force for good, and we really look at it now as a pillar of our success. There is much to be achieved towards economic prosperity together and create a more robust strategic partnership between Washington and New Delhi. We recognize that the real amenability, the catalyst, and really the secret source of this relationship is just not the political corridors of Raisina Hill or Capitol Hill, but it's the warmth of the nation's peoples and the ties we have with each other. I think the three words of our constitutions, "we the people," simply demonstrate this better than ever. And people ties are an intangible, yet the strongest asset we have. So with that, again, congratulations to the entire Indiaspora team, and we look forward to partnering more. Thank you.
Okay, now we have a conversation with someone who knows US, who knows India, who's worked in the tech industry for a long time. And I had the good fortune of working with Debjani when I was a volunteer at NASSCOM for over a decade, helping them with their product conclave, the NASSCOM product conclave in Bangalore, getting the tech founders educated, inspired, motivated, and so forth. So we're very fortunate to have Debjani, who is the president of NASSCOM. All of you know NASSCOM needs no introduction, but she's done phenomenal work to build the industry, the IT services industry and the software industry over the past many years. And she'll be in conversation with Neeraj Agarwal from BCG. So both of you, please come on up. And by the way, Debjani is also a distinguished fellow at Niti Aayog. So she's helping them articulate their tech strategy as well.
Debjani, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
In addition to what MR said, I think for me, one thing which always stands out about you and technology is you bring this human-centric approach to technology and you bring a beating heart to technology. Technology can sometimes be cold and somewhat distant, and I think you make it really, really relatable. So thank you for what you do and what you're going to be doing in AI and the other topics which you've been hugely passionate about in times to come. So I'm going to start right up with a question. When we talk about diaspora, one of the industries which I've had the good fortune of being closely associated with or seeing it is the whole IT services tech industry, right? And from some humble beginnings 40, 50 years ago, I think NASSCOM is also 40 years old now, roughly? Nearing. It's what? $250 billion plus industry. I see many people here in the audience who've been champions of that as well. There are many stories to be proud of. Is there one story from your side, which a human story or something which you feel excited about when you reflect on that?
Well, first of all, congratulations on the report. I was just going through it. Fantastic stuff. There are so many stories, and I don't want to play favorites. I don't want to pick one. But what I'll say is, when you look at the Indian industry, the tech industry as a whole, and the role that they are playing in strengthening the US economy and many other countries, right? It's amazing, because today, if you look at US, around 2 years back, if I'm not wrong, 2.5 years back, we did a study to understand the impact of just the top 10 Indian companies, the top 10 to 12 Indian companies on the US economy. It was 80 billion. That's the impact on US GDP, right? Collectively, they were hiring around 6 lakh people, direct and indirect jobs. Even more interesting, they were spending around nearly 1.5 billion on skilling in US to build the talent pipeline, and some amazing stories of the kind of initiatives they're driving, from higher ed down to community schools, et cetera, et cetera. But that's just the big companies. Then you can talk about our startups. It is fantastic to see an Indian startup like Fluid AI working with some of the biggest banks in the US, driving their digital transformation. It is fantastic to see Indian startups working with US ministries, departments on agriculture, robotics, so much more, right? I think it ultimately comes down to the human angle. It ultimately comes down to the talent factor. Right? I think the Indian talent and our ability to adapt and our ability to contribute anywhere in the world is definitely the success story, I think. But just one more last point on this, Neeraj. The best part of this is it's a two-way story. Look at the US companies in India and the contribution they have. You talked about the 254 billion, half of that would be the US companies, the GCCs, and then you have the Accentures and IBMs and Microsoft, all of them put together. So their contribution, of the 5 million people we hire, I think they contribute to around 2 million. So again, close to half. So it's a brilliant example of what a win-win partnership should be.
I often joke in my own firm that if we had to, we started as Boston Consulting Group because we started in Boston, but if we had to rename the company based on where the most people are, we could probably be called the Gurgaon Consulting Group, But that's a joke aside. There's every decade, one new change happens, and there's this, the epitaph of the industry we write about, this time this is going to really impact. So AI, certainly there's a lot of talk about the positives and the negatives of that to the industry. Where do you net out on that? I know where I net out, but I want to hear it from you.
So I have a little different way of looking at it. I don't think of it as a positive and a negative. I think of it as two parallel truths. And we are dealing with two parallel truths, right? One, yes, it is absolutely a transformative technology. I don't think there are any questions about that, especially when you look at the applications of AI in areas like drug discovery. There are no questions about what this technology can do and why it's so important for us. But fact, we are spending a lot on it. I mean, I think Sequoia has come up with a number of around 600 billion if you look at just NVIDIA's run rate and multiply that by 2. So that's the amount we are spending on setting up the compute, right? And yes, there is no line of sight to where the returns are. So these are two sort of parallel truth that exists currently. And I think it's a good thing, because when you break this down further, you do realize that this is the time for a pivot towards the application of AI. Where are we going to use it? What are the big problems we're going to solve? Where are we going to see the returns? And I think that was much needed. I think from that high peak that we were at, it's now
the hype will still continue, I'm quite sure. But in parallel, we are moving towards a much more sobering valley of reality, where I do believe the focus will shift majorly towards making AI real. And I again believe that's a great opportunity for India.
So, okay, so taking that thread further, you've been now working with Neeti on thinking to the AI agenda, and as we talk about Viksit Bharat and all our aspirations, I think whichever way it plays out, I think it will be an integral part of the equation. And then to bring it in fold, one of the phrases I often use, or I've seen, is what I call T3. So the technological superiority in the world is going to be dominated in the years to come between US, India, and China. And these three countries will play a disproportionate role in shaping the world of tomorrow. Do you think, and in these, maybe, I don't know, I mean, India is probably still more coming of age in its own way. How do you, so bunch of things, but in this AI wave, in this T3 world, what's the role US and India could play together in this world of tomorrow?
So first of all, the work I'm doing in Neeti is to build out the Frontier Tech Charter, including AI, but not just AI, A++, right, for India. I think currently, if you look at the pundits, they don't see India in the picture.
I agree.
They see India and China as the two tech powers, that is going to shape.
You're saying US and China.
US and China, sorry. US and China as the two tech powers that will shape. Our goal is to make India the third option.
So that's why I created this.
Yes.
I've been using
so
this term.
That's the goal, and that's what we have to go after. But as we make India the third option, I think the way we are thinking about India's tech lead, the vision that we have is a little different. I think the world will need to start healing at some point. The current focus on building bigger models and the amount of disruption it's causing to our planet, I think the world will need to start healing. And what we are thinking about is how do we shape the future of technology, which is human-centric, planet-friendly, and resilient. I think these are three things that at least I personally obsess a lot about. And I do believe that India, rather than following the playbook, should create its own playbook. And we need to create a playbook. Yes, AI is going to transform the world. India has to be that country that will make sure it does so for the benefit of humanity and the environment. And that's the focus that's the lens that we are applying.
That's intriguing and excellent. So maybe one more question. If you had to ask of either the diaspora or the local Indians within in what they can step up to play a role in shaping this, would you have anything on top of your mind? This is what...
There is, there's just so much going on, and I would just, I think this has to be, you get the best out of technology when you have the best collaborations happening, right? That's when, and it's also not about AI or anything, it's about the orchestration. I think this is really about collaboration. So, open to ideas, open to inputs. There is so much that has to be done to shape the roadmap ahead. But I think, and this is my, every time I talk to students, this is what I tell them. This is our time to be a little different. This is our time to not follow the narrative that is being built, but start questioning and building our own narrative in whatever jobs, whatever roles we are in. And that narrative has to be about ensuring that, it's not about putting humans in the AI loop, but we really have to figure out, we have to change that narrative. The loop exists, it's a human loop. How do you put AI in and not humans in the AI loop, right? I think we have to change the narrative. And absolutely open to all ideas and support that we can get.
So, just as I look at, on this world of India playing a role in the shaping the innovative future, there are many things which probably play to India's strength. One is our unit economics are different, which forces a fundamental rethink of the operating model. Our ability to leapfrog has actually, because we sometimes have less legacy, it makes it easier to leapfrog.
You have to.
And I think our consumers, as a result, are more dynamic, I feel. They are not, their willingness to change in the lifetime to multiple new things is often more there. So I do feel it creates permission space for us to take that leap.
You can't play catch up. You just can't play catch up, right? And India should not play catch up strongly. I don't think the model that we have to, if you did say we have to catch up, I don't think that model is the right model. So I don't believe India should play catch up. We have to disrupt, we have to leapfrog, we have to find our own path. And the best thing about Indians is whether we are young or old, but I do believe we are digital natives. We all take to technology like fish. It sort of comes very naturally to us. So I think that's a huge advantage that we have. And somehow in India, when we think about technology, it's always an augmentation of our capabilities, our productivity, our efficiencies. Thankfully, we are not thinking of it from a replacement perspective. So I think that is another big advantage that we have.
No, I love this phrase, whether you're young or old, we're digital natives. I'm conscious of time. Maybe there's one quick question from the audience if we can take. If there is somebody who would like to or add a perspective to this, we could possibly take that. But otherwise, I would like to roll it along. Okay, Vikash, you want to go?
Hi. This is Vikash, I'm from BCG. Neeraj and I have had a chance to work together for many years, so I think the point I have is something I think Neeraj has already pioneered the vision. One of the thoughts that keep coming to me, and I'm a recent migrant to the US, and I'm seeing somebody who's lived and grown in this country now having seen the benefit of the upside. I think we're talking about collaboration at a point. I think we probably need to go upstream a bit, and one of the things I think which needs a deeper collaboration is academia. Yeah. And Plaksha, I think, is a step in that direction, but I think the depth of education system that exists in some of the Western world, if part of that comes here, the depth of capability, innovation, and tech disruption we can create, which combines with the ecosystem opportunity here, all the things you talked about, disruption at a grassroots level, innovation for the emerging markets and all this stuff. I just think that's a space where more work needs to happen. In some way, it could prevent some exit of talent, bring it here, but it requires a deeper collaboration with the country. I don't know if you have a different thought, but I just think that's a space where we need more investments, more effort to create 50, 100 such universities, which then, we're not looking for the NIITs or IITs or whatever, there's 15, 20, but there is a much larger number. And it's easier for people to go there and do stuff that they aspire to go to West and do. I mean, that's just one thought, I think, which just goes a bit upstream, but I think can be a game changer if you take a 20, 50-year view.
Absolutely agree. I think collaboration in academics is so important. I also believe that academics is now ready for a big disruption in terms of whether it's in the West or in India, just in terms of how we learn and what we do with it. And I think we have to, especially for India, and this is completely my personal opinion, but I do believe that we have to think of it very differently, because it's not just about training engineers how to build models or how to become data scientists or data analysts or whatever, right? But we have to train the entire generation on how to use these tools for higher productivity and also responsibly. How do you ensure you safeguard your own privacy and your own interests? Because every single person from farmer to engineer is going to be touched by this technology. So I think we have to, we have to integrate the use of these technologies into every aspect of education and not just engineering, college, or STEM. It has to cut across. Second, I think this is the right time to really focus on building much more scientific temperament in this country. We need almost a dream, like I think in Israel used to have this campaign that you need one Nobel winner in every household or something, which encouraged their students to get into science. That was the dream of every Israeli mother, I'm told. Maybe we need to think something similar, where we need one innovator almost in every household. And how do we do that? So I do believe that a few of these things need a very disruptive approach. I don't think we can continue to tinker with such an old education system and change it the way we need to change it. We have to figure out how to disrupt.
So, you know, your last comment gave me a thought. I was recently on a holiday and I was in Florence, and we had to see Michelangelo's sculptures. And David is one of those famous ones. And when he was asked about David, he said, David was always there in the stone, I just chiseled it out. So I didn't create David. I think maybe the innovator is always there, we have to chisel it out, yeah? So all right, on that note, we could probably bring this to a wrap. Thank you, Videvani, for making the time and coming here, yeah?
Thank you, Neeraj. Thank you, Debjani. Our next speaker is Alexander Slater. He's the Managing Director for India, US IBC. Alexander, floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many faces in the audience here for this really wonderful event to bring so many people involved in different aspects of the US-India relationship together. My name is Alexander Slater. I'm the Managing Director of the US-India Business Council. This means that I lead USIBC's team here on the ground in India. I've been here for the last 5 years, and during my tenure, we've doubled the size of our staff and expanded to multiple cities outside of Delhi, including Mumbai and Bangalore. I think this all reflects the growth and dynamism and rapidly changing nature of the relationship between the US and India, which in so many ways is driven by the people-to-people ties between the two countries. And so I just want to congratulate Indiaspora and BCG on the release of this impact report. You know, MR was one of the first people who I met when I took this job, and he warmly welcomed me to the role and has been a wonderful supporter ever since. And of course, I've worked with Sri in multiple avatars that he has had here, and it's wonderful to see that so accomplished a person is leading Indiaspora's efforts here on the ground in India. So it's wonderful to have you as a partner. Thank you, Sri. You know, my friend and colleague Nivi from USISPF spoke earlier, and she and I know each other well, and the ambassador made a wonderful joke about the relationship between USIBC and USISPF. I would say that in a prior life, I worked at McKinsey, which I know also has a deep India diaspora. And so I would say congratulations very much to BCG on the good work you've done here. I'm sure the folks at McKinsey are smarting at the fact that you guys had the lead role here. Of course, both organizations do really good work, and it's largely, or in many ways, driven by Indian Americans. In fact, I was hired at McKinsey by an Indian American partner. In any event, to talk about the report, look, the funny thing about the report is that all of the key facts that were pulled out in this morning's discussions were the ones that I have here, and I wrote this yesterday. Script spelling bee, the percentage of unicorns in India with US-educated founders, co-authors of scientific publications, US patents with an Indian origin author, and 22,000 faculty members at higher education institutions. I think the reason why I pulled these out, much like the people who were speaking this morning pulled this out in the conversation to start this session, is because they are at the heart of the economic vibrancy of the US-India relationship. Many people would say, and I think this just came up in the conversation here with Debyani, that it is the United States' educational infrastructure, especially higher education, that drives innovation in the country, that drives well-being in the country. And so many Indians in so many ways contribute to that, whether it's as faculty members, innovators, students, which of course the report also lays out, and the impact that those folks have on the economy. But these are large numbers, right? And everything that I think others have talked about to date, you've heard it from Minister Jaishankar, who obviously has deep experience in the US, and you've heard it from Ambassador Garcetti, is that really what's behind all this is human stories. Okay, so let me tell you a brief human story, a bit about me. I am obviously not Indian American, and I am not of the Indian diaspora. But I do come from another diaspora community. But I was born in New York City. My son, however, is 3 years old, and he was born here in Delhi. He has an American passport and an OCI, so he is a member of your community. And I look forward to him being able to associate one part of his identity with all of you, and hope that when he is of age, you will welcome him with open arms. My sister has lived in India for many years as a journalist, so she too has experience with the Indian and American backgrounds. My best friend growing up was a gentleman named Korean Mayan. He is still my best friend. His father was born in Kerala. After my wife and I, my wife is an Indian citizen, were married in our civil ceremony in DC, we went for lunch at Bombay Club in Farragut Square. My last two bosses are members of the Indian diaspora. Nisha Biswal, who is now the Deputy CEO at the Development Finance Corporation, and Atul Keshup, a former US ambassador who's now the president of the US-India Business Council. And both of them, of course, are very I would expect, part of the figures in the report of people at the official level driving the relationship forward. I've also worked with Indian Americans who are leaders in public service. I practiced law for many years, and Sri Srinivasan, I was at O'Melveny & Myers. Sri was a partner at that time. He is now a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit and was very much at the top of President Obama's list as a nominee to the Supreme Court when there was an opening during the Obama administration, and I expect his name would come up again in future conversations. Dileep Singh of the National Security Council, Jasjit Singh, who leads Select USA at Commerce, is a former US IBC colleague. Dileep and I are friends. Sitaraman Panchanathan, the head of the NSF, and he and I have worked together in this role. Kaushik Basu, former chief economist at the World Bank, was a colleague of mine when I worked at the bank for the president of the bank for a number of years. Indermit Gill, who's now the president and who is now the chief economist there, is also of Indian origin. And so I'm sharing you these stories because my life is you. And I think it shows that on a human level, you have arrived. The Indian diaspora is the American community in every way. And I would encourage, and I think the impact report shows that, right, at a high level, in a numbers level. And my own experience and my own life is that, in so many ways, deeply intertwined. We all have multiple identities, of course, right? And it's the culture, our cultural diversity is a human treasure. But again, you are all Americans. And I think that now that that is the case, and that your impact on US society is so great, and that, as Minister Jaishankar said, you have a unique connection among diaspora communities to India, and I think that too is a real trenchant observation. What are you to do with this, right? What good in the world can you do with this wonderful intermediation status that you all have? And I think there's a lot. If it were up to me, or if I would have a thought on this after my 5 years here, my own experience in public service and my own experience with the Indiaspora community at a human level that I've shared here, I would say the most important thing to do is to lean in hard. And I know that MR and Sri take this seriously, to make sure that the official bond between India and the United States remains strong and grows stronger. As Minister Jaishankar said, the relationship you all have with India is a fundamental asset here. It gives you unique credibility. It gives you credibility that even with all the connections that I have to India, I don't have. And I would encourage you to think long and hard about the good that you can do with it. You know, at the US-India Business Council, we work hard every day to deepen the strategic partnership and the commercial relationships between the two countries. But we need your help to do that, right? Let's ease doing business. If we want to make sure that a free, open, peaceful, and prosperous Indo-Pacific region endures, we need to make sure that US and India are bound together in trying to make that happen, even through moments of difficulty. And it's the commercial relationship, it's the people-to-people ties that will keep the two countries bound together through the ups and downs of the official relationship. So, let's ease doing business. There are so many level playing field issues in India where US firms incorporated in India, employing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Indians, driving formal job creation here, making life-saving medication for Indians, expanding safety nets here for Indians, are treated differently than so-called Indian firms. As somebody who works in the international economic environment, I don't even know what that means to be an Indian firm or an American firm these days. If you are incorporated in India as a sub, you employ tens of thousands of people here, and you are making great products here. That to me is an Indian firm. And we need your help helping to explain that and to push that, because there are so many benefits that come from India, from the investment that flows following this. And that's something that I think we'll hear from the next panel about investment here in India. We need to ease cross-border investment as part of this effort. This is something that the finance minister raised in her budget speech earlier this year, and it's something that, with interest rates in the U.S. set to decline, will become more attractive financially for U.S. firms, be they in the investment business or general corporate firms, or generally for corporate firms. But level playing field issues in doing business and barriers to trade make it complicated. I'm interested in hearing from, again, everyone on the panel that follows about their views on this and how we can do better and how we can work together to both ease doing business and ease foreign investment in India. But again, I think ultimately, given the capacity that Indiaspora has, the credibility that you have, the thing that you can do most is to make sure that the social ties that bind us are strong, that we see each other as friends. This is what Minister Jaishankar also said when he talked about trust. He talked about it in the context of AI and digital innovation, but there's more to it than that. When we see each other, we want to see each other as friends and humans. Right? When I go to Bombay Club after my civil ceremony, it's because this is part of who I am, this food, right? And the culture. And when my best friend is somebody of Indian origin, I don't see the difference, right? I trust that. And you are the people who can help make this the reality for the two countries at the official level. And one way we do that is by sharing our commitment to vibrant and inclusive democracies that protect individual rights everywhere. Everything we do to promote inclusion and equality in both countries, creates a resonance to see ourselves as the same and as partners and as trustworthy. And so I just want to say thank you to all that you all are doing to make a vibrant U.S.-India relationship strong across so many levels. You play a critical role building trust between our two countries, and I look forward to continue to working for you, with you, with MR, with Sri, with others, to help make this a reality for many years to come. So thank you all.
So now we come to the last session. It's a panel discussion titled Investment Outlook, US-India Linkages and the Role of Diaspora. This session will be moderated by Siddharth Madan. He's the Managing Director and Partner of Boston Consultancy Group. Please come up, Siddharth. Sanjeev Bikhchandani, who is the Founder and Executive Vice Chairman of InfoEdge. Sanjay Kukreja, who is a Partner and CEO at the Chris Capital. And Ms. Pratibha Jain, Head of Strategy and General Counsel, Everstone Group. Thank you.
Well, it's a privilege to be speaking to this group. Finale topic just before lunch, but we'll make it interesting for you. So, wide range of topics we've covered, contributions of Indian diaspora. Look, if you look at the last 2 decades, Indian startup and investment ecosystem has come quite far. So maybe let me start with you, Sanjeev. You have been a 90s founder, pre-dot-com crisis. You've seen multiple cycles. India has come so far in terms of capital availability, as well as the kind of startups and the kind of support ecosystem we're seeing around the same. What has changed? How do you see the last 2 decades?
I think what has happened is, see, India has always had this huge talented middle class, highly educated for the most part. But their aspirations used to be, largely, to study hard, do well, go to good college, get a good job. Right? So becoming an entrepreneur was not aspirational. It was not, it was in fact perhaps discouraged by the parents. But what's happened now in the last 20 years is that entrepreneurship as a career choice has moved mainstream. Parents are okay with it. There is risk capital available. There are people who've done it before you. There are people who are willing to work at startups. You are able to find co-founders. The market is larger. The penetration of internet, mobile telephony, India has gone digital. So all these things have happened and helped. And so now you find that, I remember in my class at business school, there were 175 of us. And if you had done a poll, how many of you want to be entrepreneurs at some point in time, maybe 10 or 15 hands would have gone up. That's less than 10%. Today it'll be about 40, 45%. That's what has changed.
Interesting. So how, if you look at the last few years specifically, like post-COVID, the investment activity quite peaked. 2021, 22 were great years. After that, we have seen activity going back to pre-COVID levels, 35% drop roughly last year. Sanjay, maybe you can comment on this. Where do we go from here? Like, where are we headed?
So look, I think, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak here and, to talk about the Indian diaspora as well. Just on the investment outlook, I think that's your question. And we are seeing, so we started Chris Capital 99-2000 period. At that point, it was less than $1 billion of private equity money that went into India. Now we are, routinely doing about 50 billion a year, right? So it's been a very strong sort of pickup in the activity, investment activity, and the macro tailwind seems to suggest that you'll probably go above 100 billion at some point in the future, right? So there's a very big, if you think about global funds and their allocation to India, all of that is increasing, right? So I don't see, while the part of the narrative that you talked about was limited to, I would say, the tech side of it, there is an equally large, buyout side of private equity in tech services. It could be in healthcare. It could be in other. You've seen some large deals. Bharat Serums recently. Mankind ended up doing. But even global funds were looking at it. Or you talked about press around some of the big brands in India, Haldiram, etc. So a lot of foreign capital that's looking to come in and deploy capital at size and scale. So the opportunity exists. I think what's changed, if you ask that question, I think 10 years or 20 years ago, it was almost only minority capital. I think what's changed is Indian entrepreneurs, willing to sell businesses. Many of the entrepreneurs actually started their journey in the early 90s or late 90s and maybe early 2000s and have gone through one generation change or two, right? And therefore now are willing to be at a point where they're open to change. And so the market has shifted maybe 40-50% control where they're actually selling to sell lock, stock and barrel to private equity. And therefore, this 50 billion, I see it going to above 100 over a period of time without sort of giving a definite period of time. It's a secular move one way. It'll have its own cycles, right, as it does. But as a proportion of allocation to global private equity is still small. And that proportion for India relative to, let's say, China or relative to other markets in Asia will definitely increase.
And Pratibha, what do you make of the recent IPOs and the, the exits? Have we truly matured as a market where exits have become real easier, where companies, startups, even which are not profitable, can potentially list themselves and it's acceptable?
Thanks, Siddharth. Firstly, I want to thank Indiaspora and BCG for inviting me. I'm very excited because I was part of this diaspora almost half of my career. I was working in US and with US firms, and this corridor, I'm an Americophile, and this corridor really excites me, and I continue to do work on this corridor. But as Alexander was mentioning, when I came back, I was very excited that I can actually be in India and contribute to, the investment growth in India. But seeing over the years how this group has become more powerful in the US, There's so much they can do to strengthen this corridor, whether through investments, whether philanthropy, tech, education, so very excited. On your more technical question, has the Indian market matured? Absolutely. As Sanjay was mentioning, from where we started to where we are today, I think the policy recognizes, just as they recognize for FPIs that there is entry and exit required for listed markets, there is a recognition amongst the Indian market, the policy makers, and the industry as a whole that it's a different asset class and it requires entry and exit. The Indian listed market has matured significantly. You can see there is a significant shift from relying on only foreign investment to the domestic institutional investors and retail investors being very steady investors and recognizing, I think with the growth of the mutual fund industry, there's been a strong push by the government and that's really helped. So the startups, of course, faced in the last few years issues, especially if you were non-profitable. I think right now SEBI is really clamping down on those IPOs. But other than that, the IPO market is very strong and doesn't fluctuate as it used to, in earlier years with global headwinds. And it's a cycle, right? So even if the markets are down, you've got enough secondary exits that are available. There's enough private equity investors and strategic investors in the market. So we don't worry about exits as much as we used to. I think that's least of the concern. I think finding the right investment targets is where the focus is.
And that takes me to Sanjeev. Like Sanjeev, when you, in your venture, you probably did not have this, line of sight to say, investors coming in easily, finding an exit or an IPO so easily. How, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, how is the mindset shifting? Like with this possibility becoming real?
Well, look, I have been an entrepreneur since 1990, right? And for the first 10 years, of course, we were running like a cottage industry, no external capital. फिर venture capital आया, the venture capital came to India, and I think Chris Cap was in those days one of the early venture capitalists. That time they were VC and not PE. And then, we ourselves raised venture capital. But what I want to point out is, since this is about the India-US corridor, and even today, 90 to 95% of risk capital in India is from overseas and usually from the US. So, maybe 70%, 60% from the US, right? So, it's actually US capital that is fueling a lot of the startups in India, either directly or through VC funds or through Indian VC funds. Even in Indian VC funds, you'll find overseas LPs. So I think that the role of US capital in startups, in the venture capital industry in India, I think must be understood and appreciated. It is huge and mammoth. I think this could not have happened to other capital. So yes, talent is important, market is important, but risk capital to fund the startups has a lot of it has come from the US.
Interesting that you spoke about the US-India corridor. I think the other dimension to the capital flow is also the talent. During this report, we found that 11% of US startups are actually, one of the co-founders is an Indian origin person. And if you look at the Indian unicorns, almost 25% have US educated founders, and a lot many more actually have worked for some time in US and then came back. Yeah, and PVC industry you already spoke about. So how do you, if we think in terms of the US-India corridor and the role it has played in this ecosystem coming ahead, how do you see that so far and what's from here? And Sanjay, maybe you can take it because you also have a lot of investments with companies which have strong corridor connection.
No,
right?
so I'll take that because I can again relate some personal stories to it, right? I mean, we've seen the life in the US-India corridor, right? Right from inception. So there's so many ways we're intertwined, right? When we raised Chris Capital, as Sanjeev was pointing out, We were VC to begin with, but almost all our capital was overseas. It was almost 100% US in the first fund. Even now, about 50% of our capital, even now we've gotten more global capital, you know, Asian, European, all of that, but about 50% is North American, right? So very, very strong linkages of capital coming back to India from the US. We started investing in the venture world also in the, what we used to call back then concept arbitrage. So really see what's worked in the US, try and see, bring those models back to India, right? And a lot of business models in India have actually taken that, you know, that approach as well. Of course, the reverse has also played out. And there have also been some, you know, thinking of uniquely Indian solutions as well. But a lot of it has also been just seeing what's worked. You know, health insurance didn't exist in India. Now you got to get it in and execute, and now you get growth capital to build it out further, etc. Right? So that's the other aspect of it. The third aspect of it is where's the talent, right? 20% of the world's workforce is Indian, right? Of people in the employable age, and that's only increasing over time. So you really don't have an option. Wherever you are, you have to have, this is where the world goes to work, which is India. And so we have to use the talent well, globally. And so the India-US angle is there as well to say, and when we were 2012-13 onwards, starting to look at investments in the US, and roughly now, 30% of our investments is actually in US companies, US headquartered companies. 70% would be domestic, Indian. So lots of linkages. And in those companies, the idea is not to just have isolated, right? The idea is to bring Indian cost talent, so leverage the Indian talent-based, cost-based to actually reduce and improve margins over time. And so from an investment angle also, there is a very strong case for that. And finally, where's the market, right? So India is a market, strong and large, but there is a very large market in the US, many times as the size. And I think there's a understanding of that. So can you use the Indian talent? Can you try and go in after the US market, right? And we should see a lot more of that in the tech side. We've seen it in services, but can we start seeing it in the product side as well, SaaS businesses? I think that's when the world will move in that direction quite significantly. And to be successful there, it has to be, you know, one is the size of the market, but also do you have founders who are close to the market, who are actually based in the US maybe, who understand the technology trends and how fast they're shifting, because that's where the shifts are actually happening, but can leverage the talent pool in India, right? I'm just kind of illuminating what a dream company looks like, and you get the benefit of both, but you also need a capital to scale, and the capital could very much come from both sides, US and India, and that's when you have the entire ecosystem working really well for you. Yeah.
And Sajay spoke about, you know, how early on, a lot of the investments have been about bringing globally successful models to India. One question we keep hearing, and this is a question to all of you, is when will we see a big brand come out of India for the world? A lot of startups, Indian startups, unicorns, well known, which have done extremely well in India, have tried making acquisitions or setting up businesses outside. Sajib, you have a significant part of your business in Middle East, but a lot of companies have tried acquiring firms also in the US and Europe, but we have not seen massive success, like success in pockets. When will we see a big brand coming out of India?
I think we've been ready for a while. Honestly, the talent is there. What Sanjeev talked about, risk capital, you know, very strong availability, both equity and debt, is very crucial for you to be able to scale up. That's a place where most startups really struggle. We have seen, especially in the last few years. If the global capital dries up, very quickly there is just no backup. So that's a major challenge. The regulatory, the policy environment, you know, India needs to open up a lot more for everything, right? For technology tie-ups, for exposure to the Indians who are in India. I think the category which has worked globally, especially in the US, have come back, started their startups. It's easier for them because they have the exposure, but then stumble on, so, you know, we had flips out of India, where, you know, the startups were in here and then they set up companies offshore, so they were not subject to the regulatory hurdles here. And then very quickly now we are seeing reverse flips. They're coming back because they're not able to create that market offshore. So I think just a more open economy that provides the exposure and the capital. Otherwise, the talent, I mean, the proof is in the pudding, right? You yourself mentioned, if the Indian Americans can do so well, going from here and setting up in the US, there is no reason why Indians can't create global giants sitting out of India.
Sanjeev, can I get your comments also on this?
Okay. You know, I have a slightly different and a few specifics. So it used to be asked, it's stopped being asked now, but it used to be asked about maybe 15, 20 years ago, India has got so many software engineers, how come Google didn't come out of India? This question was always asked, right? And the answer is actually quite simple. The best products are created where the customers are. And if the largest market is the US, and the largest capital pools are in the US, right? And the largest outcomes for investors to invest in these tech companies is in the US, right? You will find the best and biggest products for the US market coming from the US. You know, India may bad case, I mean, sitting in India, I'm not sure if I can even conceive what will work in the US. Okay? Now, if some of those products have global applicability, they'll go global. So Google is global, LinkedIn is global, you know, Facebook, they're global. However, let's look at another situation. Israel does not have a large domestic market. It builds tech companies. All those tech companies are focused on somehow working in the US. But almost all of them eventually get bought by some US company, and then they're taken big in the US. I'm not sure how many Israeli-owned companies are big in the US or globally in software and tech. Let's take a third example. The Japanese automobile industry, right? It started off as, you know, if you read the history of the Japanese automobile industry, it started off as being really very ordinary cars, perhaps down market, sasta, poor quality, in the 50s and 60s, and then gradually they improved till the 80s when they were dominating the world. But either, you know, they had a large domestic market, as in the US, or they were very closely allied to the US where they had market access, right? And didn't have a domestic market. Now, India is somewhere in the middle. No, we are allies with the US, but we're not close to the US like Israel is. Let's face it. You can say whatever you want over here, but that is the case, right? We've got a reasonable domestic market, much more than Israel. Israel is 7, 8 million people, I know 9 million people, right? But it's nowhere near the US. So you won't get the same kind of capital flows that capital pools that you get in the US. India will produce global brands repeatedly when the Indian economy grows and we have a very large domestic market with the same kinds of pool of capital. And that might take 20, 30, 40 years.
So, you know, I just add to this. I think two things are essential, right, to make the big brand work in India. And first of all, one nuance is the brand doesn't have to be always tech, right? I think Italy has done a great job in creating global brands in fashion, or, you know, so has the UK in that matter. But, you know, there can be a case for big brands to be built out of India globally. But I think there are two things that are relevant. One is, especially for tech, you know, what is the investment in R&D that we are doing as a country, right? And as companies. And as I look at more and more startups and more companies which have scaled even, and we look at that element, I think that's very, very low, right? We just don't spend enough as a country on investing behind taking the products to a different level, right? even, you know, the software services business has existed for a long time, and some of the offshoots of the product side were from the services, you know, side. And I mean, you know, you can't take the approach that, look, I'll work with my bench, which is not, you know, and try and do a product on the side, right? You have to say, listen, I'm going to willing to burn money, put my best talent here, develop something that's really interesting for the world, etc., and then, you know, product first approach. That hasn't been taken because of, I guess, also availability of capital and the pools and the ability to be distant from the end market in many ways, which Sanjeev was referring to. So I think you need to be, you know, somewhat closer to the market. You need to have an ability, a risk-taking ability, right? Which is also extremely important. I think if you talk to more and more founders, I've seen as you become successful, your risk-taking ability actually goes down dramatically. It's the ones that who don't have successful business model will kind of do anything, right? They'll go acquire something, they'll do something else. As you get better, frankly, your risk-taking ability drops.
And PEs won't invest in them.
And PEs won't invest in them. Once you have PE, then you like looking at PE. When you don't have PE, you can go ahead and do whatever you want, right? So just putting it out there, right? I think, I mean, Infosys, right, is a classic, the icon of the, you know, 2000s and all. Narayana Murthy was on record saying, listen, I want next 6 months cash to be on the balance sheet. I don't want any acquisitions to be made, etc., right? That's the mindset with which the first set of Indian entrepreneurs grew up with. Now that's changing. I think people's risk-taking abilities are improving, as well as the ability of talent and ability of capital. The size and scale of the market is also improving. So a lot of these things are changing. It'll take time, but I think unless you solve for risk-taking ability and investments in R&D, you're probably not going to get there, right?
Interesting perspectives. Let me just get some questions from the audience as well.
Well, hi, I hope I'm clearly audible. Yeah, so this is Ajasvi Gupta and I'm from IYCN, so that's the Indian Youth Climate Network. We're one of the largest climate networks across the country. So I feel like in this neo-colonial world of technological revolution or disruptive technology is definitely the way forward. And even when it comes to startups, many of them would want to invest in technology, right? Like rightfully mentioned by the panelist over here. So my very simple question is that while we are becoming the superpower or say global, through global connection, through global action of the India and US, through the collaboration that both the countries have, how are we looking at the environmental front? Say when it comes to Bitcoin mining, I won't get into deep numbers as such, but the amount of electricity generated during one Bitcoin transaction, it is enormous, right? And that comes from combustion. So while we are moving towards this front, how do we address the environmental impact of the technology? And why do I say that this is even more important today and mostly through collaborations is because you can't really work in climate and tech in silos, right? That happens only through collaboration. So how would we address that?
So definitely, you know, climate is not something you can work on linearly. It's a global effort, and India has to be a part of the solution. Otherwise, there is no solution. This is the US-India corridor is very strong on that. We've recently, for our Climate Impact Fund, got funding from the US government. The US government has announced, you know, partnership with the Indian Sovereign Fund for, you know, $1 billion+ dollars of investment into India in climate transition and including climate tech. So I think both the governments have, from a policy perspective, shown the importance of ensuring that climate transition is a focus for this corridor. And you're right, the solution is going to be non-linear, and I think there's a huge amount of focus on it. And you know, we, for example, have the largest climate fund, not just in India, but in the region.
Yeah, a couple of quick ones. I think this consciousness of what is appropriate, better technology, better methods, I think is driven by 3 or 4 things, and it's happening. Government regulation, I think, is one force. I think you'll be surprised that almost no large LP in a fund will want to that fund to invest in polluting technology or dirty technology. So, you know, there's a lot of restrictions. Capital comes with a lot of restrictions on where it's going to go. And, you know, I mean, you must be facing that, right? When you raise money. Then, yeah, no alcohol, no gambling, right? No this, no that, right? So therefore, those kind of things get funded less. Okay, and the other is, I think, the younger generation, the youth, they think very differently. Okay, when I talk to my children and their friends, they are thinking very differently on stuff around sustainability and climate change, and they're pretty assertive.
The only thing I'll add to this is just, and I'm taking the bucket broader than just environment, right? He just touched upon the word sustainability. I think sustainability is broader than just the environment, but I would put anything that falls largely in the bucket of what I would call stealing from the future. And I think that's what we really need to recognize what you're doing. When you're kind of going and polluting and, you know, backing some of these industries, you're really, you know, taking a debt from the future without the, you know, the generation that has a say, it doesn't have a say today, right? That is true even in how much, frankly, how much money we are printing as the world. Right? When we take on excess debt, eventually somebody is left with that burden and that decision maker is not there on the table. So when you think about sustainability, I think everything needs to factor in. How do we build a sustainable future and not do, you know, there are these excesses that we keep going on in cycles, and I think we are clearly in one of those excesses period that we are seeing globally, where too much, you know, leverage and too much debt has been, and very different from India relative to the global world, right? So India's in a different place, I get that. But the worldwide, we have too much debt, and we are doing too many of these things. We are moving too slowly in the energy sort of, you know, changing the ecosystem, etc., than we ought to. And I think a lot of effort is being going on. Lots of good talent, good ideas, good funding is moving in that direction. I just wish it were to move faster. And we need these solutions, you know, faster than it's actually here and now that we need these solutions. Yeah, and clearly LPs, you know, funds, they're all putting, you know, what areas. We don't do any investment today without an ESG slide in it, right? Which talks about, it's discussed in investment committees. How will it be perceived? And even if you do make an investment, the question is, how do you leave the company better on the ESG front, sustainability front, like when you entered in versus when you exited? How are you making steps to, in the 5 years that you invested, to make material difference in the sustainability footprint of a company that you invest in? Is a question that's being asked of us, and we are making sure we are kind of asking the same questions and making those investments in the companies. So it's happening, but I wish it were to happen even faster than what I just articulated. Thank you.
We're at time, and I don't want to keep you away from the lunch, but there's probably a last question from the front.
Thank you for allowing the last question. My name is Nalin Kohli. I have two questions, actually, very short ones. India has become the third largest startup ecosystem now. Still far away from US, but do you see far more happening in terms of cooperation and collaboration between startups in the US and India? Another thing, since we talked about capital, US capital, I remember way back in 2000, you know, I'd given this idea to SIDBI, and we created SIDBI Venture Capital, which was the first one, was a 100 crore fund. But our 7 good exits which happened were all to US VCs. And that was a great model, you know, because they didn't want to come at a very early stage, but they came at a little later stage. So a win-win for both. Do you see more of that happening now?
So on your first question, I think it's important to note that we are very focused on, just like Sanjay mentioned, investments that cut across US and India. So when the private equity, and that's very true for, you know, a lot of the other funds that I see operate in India. So by definition, when capital is following that cooperation, that'll happen more. And I've always felt, you know, last 2 decades plus, this is a very natural cooperation. This corridor being strong, if you look at from a business perspective, two strong democracies, very focused on technology. It's a very natural combination. I think if just let be from a policy and a regulatory perspective, if you don't bring in the geopolitics left by itself, it's a very strong, and that's the corridor we like to operate in. So I think business follows money.
So I'd like to make 2 points to your questions. One is that I think there's a lot, when you look at the Indian startups relative to the US startups, I feel like there is 2 or 3 things that are off. The equation I can't make sense of, right? So if I think about the average cost of, the talent or people, the founder teams that come in and the salaries that that the startup actually affords to pay in India is at par or even higher in many cases than what, the salary levels are of US startups, right? Which makes no sense because many times the market here is much smaller. Right, and so, and also the other thing is in the US, the concept of serial entrepreneurship is very, very strong, and every time they do, they actually dilute. They'll make sure they take a venture capitalist who then, dilute 30-40%, and therefore they're able to attract talent, they're able to keep costs very low, founders are taking very little salaries, right? In India, you see many times these are, you hire people from corporates with a salary plus, and then, then there's risk capital on top, which is not a sustainable model. I think you have to be willing to fix the cost structure a little bit more in India if you are actually going to compete at the global level and set that scale right. The second comment I'd like to make is, if you see the stacks on the cap table, right? In the US, the ecosystem is very well defined between seed, angel, venture, Series A, Series F, Series D, very different, and people they're different players in very well defined in each of these layers, which is great because it creates liquidity and a sustainability of the business models for everyone. In India, it is still developing. So many times the Series, A investors are also investing Series F and G because they like a winner and they just want to keep going at it, which is fine as long as it's the decision being made by them. But if the decision is being made because there isn't much additional capital, and we talked about the COVID situation and the slowdown after that and all that, in many situations the other capital was not available on the other side, and therefore people just marking themselves up, into every round, which is again not sustainable, right? So you need a well-diversified pool of capital to take you out on each side, and I think that's work in progress in India and developing. So as these 2 things really play out, I think you'll get more collaboration and more development, and that's when the ecosystem will really flourish.
With that, let me just allow me to thank the panel. Thank you so much for taking time out today to be with all of us.
Thank you, everyone. We've come to the close of the session today. But before we leave for lunch, which is set outside in the pre-function area, I would like to call upon my team here, without which we couldn't have been able to put this together. Preeta, Manjula, where is Shrenya? Shrenya, please come up on stage. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming and... Oh, Emar, why don't you come? Come. We'll take a photograph. Thank you. Lunch is ready, please.